So tell me, what is the role of a Chapter 7 trustee? Let's start with that. Help people understand.
Okay, so the Chapter 7 trustee is a private lawyer. They're not employed by the government. They get paid a little bit of money out of the filing fee that the person pays the bankruptcy court. And their job is to examine your bankruptcy in a Chapter 7. Their primary job is to look for any assets that are not protected that can be taken to pay your creditors. Now, most people who file bankruptcy, like 95%, sort of pulling that number out of the air, but most of them don't have assets that can be taken.
Hi, this is attorney Jamie Miller, and I welcome you to another edition of the Miller Law Chronicles Podcast. Welcome to my partner in this podcast, Mrs. Deborah Stencel. I'm not sure if you took on your husband's last name, but since our last podcast, I believe that you are betrothed. Is that a proper use of that word?
I am now married. I think betrothed means you're going to get married.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Maybe I'm betrothed. I am not going to change my name. And I have always issued the use of Mrs. However, around the wedding, it's very cute, so I'm going with it.
Nice. Well, congratulations. And I know you got married in your backyard, which was wonderful. And when I think of backyard weddings, I often think about the Brady Bunch wedding in the first episode.
Oh, yeah.
When Mike and Carol got married in their backyard and Tiger got loose and knocked over the cake. And so every outdoor wedding has its risk.
Yeah.
So maybe tell me something that, interesting that you want to share that made your outdoor backyard wedding memorable.
Well, there was hail, so that was
okay.
So we squeezed into the living room to get married.
Okay.
I planned it for dusk in October, and I thought the light would be really pretty in the pictures. And we've had a perfect dusk every day in October, except for our wedding day.
Okay.
When it was a surprise thunderstorm with hail and lightning. I knew it was bad because the dog was hiding. Well before it started to rain, I thought, why is the dog hiding? But, the ceremony was lovely, even though it was 23 people in a very tiny living room. So it's all good. It all worked out.
That's wonderful. So I'm glad, and you're happily married. The first 12 days, scale of 1 to 10, where are you at?
Oh, we're at a 10 still. Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, it is nice. We had a really nice vacation up north with leaves and stars and the dogs. And now we're back to work and no fights yet.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Up north is just a wonderful place to be this time of year. Were the leaves turning or turned?
It was absolutely perfect. They called it peak that week. And it was perfect sunshine 6 out of 7 days. So just gorgeous. I couldn't stop taking pictures.
It's wonderful. Well, congratulations and many happy years of love and sharing and good things to you and your Matt.
Thank you.
I just celebrated my 34th wedding anniversary this week.
Oh. Aw.
Yeah, so 34 years have been an amazing 34 years. If I could do it over again, I would.
That's amazing. You're so lucky.
I am. I really am. I love my wife and my family and you. I love everybody today. I want to talk about a couple things. One, some things that are confusing. So when we file a bankruptcy for somebody, a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13, anyone that files a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 is required to attend what's called a 341 hearing. And it's 341 hearing has taken on a meaning in itself, but essentially it refers to the Bankruptcy Code Section 341 that requires anyone that files bankruptcy to go before a trustee and their creditors and or any other interested parties to answer questions about their debt, their assets, their case, liabilities, everything like that. So the document that we file with the case, essentially 30 days after at the 341 hearing is presented, and people can ask questions about the person who's filed the bankruptcy status. So when they go to court, they're meeting with the trustee. So tell me, what is the role of a Chapter 7 trustee? Let's start with that. Help people understand.
Okay, so the Chapter 7 trustee is a private lawyer. They're not employed by the government. They get paid a little bit of money out of the filing fee that the person pays the bankruptcy court. And their job is to examine your bankruptcy in a Chapter 7. And their primary job is to look for any assets that are not protected that can be taken to pay your creditors. Now, most people who file bankruptcy, like 95%, sort of pulling that number out of the air, but most of them don't have assets that can be taken. But every once in a while, there is an asset. The Chapter 7 trustee's responsibility is to collect that, liquidate it, and distribute it fairly amongst the creditors. And then he or she or they get paid for it out of the money.
Right, and it's interesting because their role really is geared towards finding non-exempt assets, which is rare. You know, 90% or 99% of the cases we file are what's referred to as no asset cases, so they're not going to recover something. If they do recover an asset, how are they compensated? What does that look like?
They get a percentage of the money recovered. And sometimes they get attorney's fees that they can bill against the asset. All right. So the person filing bankruptcy never has to pay over and above what the asset is. So say you file bankruptcy and you had a lottery ticket in your pocket and it turns out it was worth $100,000 and you could only protect 12 grand of that. So you get 12 grand and the Chapter 7 trustee would get 88 grand, and he or she or they would use that to divide it equally amongst or fairly amongst the creditors, and they would take a percentage. The percentage is determined by law. I used to have this memorized. The first $5,000, they get 25%. The next $45,000, they get a smaller percentage. And then after that, an even smaller percentage. And then if they have to hire an attorney or a professional, they would also take money from the 88,000. And then the creditors get whatever's left. If everybody gets paid off, then the debtor gets the leftover money back.
Right. And then what comes from that is that the trustee's also going to look at your documents. They're going to want to make sure that if you own your home, that there's a mortgage on it, because if there's a perfected mortgage, it goes against or goes towards the equity that there is in the property. And they're going to look at your car titles to make sure if there's a lien on the property, on the vehicle, that it's properly perfected. So their role is to essentially find assets for the benefit of the creditors, but then they also step into the shoes of asking the debtor questions to make sure there was no fraudulent conveyances, like meaning that a debtor had an asset and transferred that asset in anticipation of filing bankruptcy to hide the asset, or did they pay creditors more than $600 in the 90 days prior to filing? Did someone who filed bankruptcy, are they due an inheritance? Has someone died in the last 6 months? So you're going to go in front of the trustee. They're going to ask you questions to make sure that everything in your petition is accurate and correct, with the intent of trying to locate assets for the benefit of the creditors. And we do a good job of making sure there's no surprises. So it's very rare that we'll go into a Chapter 7 case and have a surprise come up, right? The job of the lawyer is to protect the client as best as possible.
Right.
I just filed a case yesterday where a client has about $20,000 of non-exempt property. And so the client wants to keep the property. So when we file the case, I contacted the trustee already and said, listen, we don't want to liquidate the asset. we'd like to negotiate a resolution with you. Yes, you're due about $20,000, but to get that $20,000, you have to liquidate the asset and do all this stuff. Maybe the trustee will accept less. So there's different negotiating techniques that a seasoned bankruptcy lawyer can help with. Now,
I want to underline that. I
please.
want to underline that because I kept thinking about the documents. So what you did there was you tortured your client into giving you lots and lots of documents, right?
Right.
And they don't like it. We hear about it all the time. Why do you need all this? Because we want to protect you. And so you got the documents, you realized there was an asset, you communicated with your client, hey, here's a thing, you have decisions to make here. You and your client came to a resolution of how you wanted to file the bankruptcy and what was going to happen with that extra money. And that's what you were supposed to do. Making like 4 points, I think. I love that we require so many pieces of paper from our clients. It is very hard on them. It is very hard on our staff. It is one of the reasons why bankruptcy costs money, but it protects every client so well, and there are no surprises. I just wanted to say everything you said over again.
Right. And
Such a
then sometimes you'll go to a 341 hearing or your bankruptcy hearing, and there's some other hidden figure on the Zoom call, because these hearings are all done over Zoom. We no
mm,
longer go in person to court for these. And so often, not strike that, rarely, but sometimes you go there and there'll be a representative from the Office of the United States Trustee. Now, tell me about the role of the U.S. trustee that sometimes appears in these cases.
So the United States Trustee's Office is a division or arm of the United States Department of Justice. So I think when I'm explaining this to clients, I say you have to remember that you are asking the court and the government for a big favor to get rid of all of this debt for you. And in exchange, all they ask of you is that you tell the truth, that you disclose everything, that you answer all their questions so that they know that you qualify. And the flip side of that is if you don't tell the truth, if you don't answer all the questions, or if you engaged in some activity before your bankruptcy that wasn't strictly on the up and up, like, I don't know, then the United States Trustee's Office is going to become involved in your case. Their job is more prosecutorial or investigatory. They are going to look at your documents and ask you questions to determine whether anything naughty was going on. Naughty meaning criminal or negligent, even, because bankruptcy is available to the unfortunate but honest debtor.
And they're essentially ensure that there's compliance with all the bankruptcy laws and procedures,
Mm.
but they also monitor bankruptcy cases to make sure that those that file bankruptcy aren't taken advantage of by lawyers.
That's
um,
true.
so today I had a case where I got a letter from the U.S. trustee on the case wanting to know why we charged X fees, why the person that filed bankruptcy incurred debt after they retained our office,
Mm.
and several other questions. And I, quickly responded back. It won't be a big problem, but they kind of are big brother out there, not only for the person filing bankruptcy, but for the lawyers, to make sure that lawyers aren't taking advantage of clients in vulnerable positions.
And other parties as well. When I first moved to Wisconsin, I was working on my own before I had the pleasure of working with you. And I took a number of referrals from out of state
Some would
online.
say that you're still working on your own.
Well, I am extremely lucky. But I was taking these referrals from this out of state bankruptcy firm that was taking Wisconsin clients, preparing the paperwork, and then paying Wisconsin lawyers to basically file it and go to the 341. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that setup as long as you do everything you're supposed to do. Well, I noticed after a couple of clients that my clients were being overcharged, that their paperwork wasn't done properly, that they were being mishandled in naughty, naughty ways. So I reported them because I'm nothing if not a tattletale. I reported the company to the trustee's office, the United States Trustee's office, and they took care of it. And I think that was a good win for consumers. They should feel confident when they go to hire someone that they're going to have their best interests at heart. They also go after those debt companies that promise to settle your debts, but then just take all your money. What are the foreclosure scams? All kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, all these non-attorney bankruptcy preparers.
Right.
They're pursuing that. There was one person here in Milwaukee that was, I think they're limited to charge like $75, but these bankruptcy preparers that you find generally they're not lawyers. They fill out paperwork, and the trustee very aggressively goes after those people to prevent them from taking advantage of those that need to file for bankruptcy. So it's the bankruptcy process is increasingly complicated. There's different stakeholders in each case, but the most important thing and the most important people in the process probably are the Chapter 7 trustee looking for assets and the U.S. trustee making sure that there's compliance. And many of our clients are often confused, and we explain it to them. But I think this podcast is really helpful about explaining the difference between those two parties. But I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And Mazel Tov on your wonderful wedding.
Thank you so much.
And may it last forever, and may you have a good day.
Thank you.
Appreciate you so much.
And happy anniversary to you and Felicia.
Thank you so much.